Hello there, because I'm Carlos podcast number 24. So it is another audio version of the podcast. It's been a little while since I think a couple of weeks since the last episode. So I've kind of been keeping to the schedule, supposedly, so to speak, of maybe about one of these a month. It's not really, as I said before, the audio version is never on a set schedule. It's kind of when I have a topic, I touch on it, but I'm trying to keep it to one a month unofficially on the down low. But sometimes I get a couple of topics in a row and it's worth talking about. But I did have one that I wanted to touch on, talking late this afternoon. And I'm recording this on the Sunday, leading into AEW's All Out. So you guys know who have been watching the YouTube channel or been listening to it a little bit. I did a little wrestling on the last episode. Don't worry, I'm not going to bombard you with it too much on this one. But you do know that I do enjoy the AEW wrestling product. Now, they've got their challenges, but that's a whole separate conversation, which we're not going to touch on here. But I will, with that said, I was able to, on the Instagram, I like to try to show off some cards that I picked up recently. And one of those for tonight and the last couple of days have been wrestling cards. And then tonight I did a card with someone who will be featured in one of the prominent matches. And you never know. It may end up being an interesting night for them. We'll see. Because I do have cards of 3 of the 4 people participating in the match. And depending on who wins, I may be able to show off a different card either later today or tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with that. Either way, those of you who are having the day off, enjoy your Labor Day. In Canada, we got Labor Day. I think in the States as well. So wherever you are, hopefully you're either having a good weekend or you're going to have a day off on Monday, and hopefully you enjoy that as well. Regardless, the reason I wanted to make this episode was I wanted to talk about a topic that pertains a little bit. The wrestling cards kind of play into it a little bit, but not specifically. But at the same time, I also did an episode on my YouTube channel where I talked about poker cards. And I talked about that. And basically, I've been talking about, and this is the actual topic I want to touch on. I've been talking about a variety of different projects that I'm working on outside of sports cards, but also outside of maybe the categories that I'm kind of seen as participating in. And that's kind of the idea of avoiding being typecasted. So I think that's going to be part of the title, don't be typecasted as a collector or being typecasted, something like that. I'm not sure exactly how I'll phrase it, but it's going to be something to that effect. And it's kind of a fun phenomenon that I do find sometimes that happens with folks that are doing either a lot of Instagram or people that do YouTube or whatever the case may be. It's one of those things where you do become associated with something, which is, by the way, not a bad thing because it's a nice way of people potentially being able to reach out to ask, hey, is this something you might be interested in? And that has its advantages. I've certainly been able to take advantage of that myself. The main collection that I'm kind of, I guess, known for, so to speak, is my Mike Modano card collection. And that's something that I've been working on for a very long time. I started collecting him in 1995. I'm not going to go into the whole backstory, but long story short, I've been collecting Mike Modano cards for 27 years. I don't have the biggest collection. I don't feel like I have the most expensive collection. I'm not going to argue with you that I have the best collection. I definitely know some other collectors who have gone very deep as far as some very difficult to find cards, expensive cards, the whole 9 yards. I do feel I have a very strong collection that I've built over time, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm quite happy with it. And of course, I'm always looking for opportunities to pick up some more pieces. I'm going to have a nice, I would say almost grail level piece that I've been chasing for some time that hopefully will be coming in the collection soon, and maybe in the next week or so. And if that comes in, I'll have a chance to do a video on the YouTube channel talking about the story of that card a little bit in a little bit more depth because that is one that I have chased for a while. And there's still some cards out there that still fall under this category of something that I'm chasing. It provides that challenge. But that has been one of the pillars of my collection, so to speak, for a very long time. Vintage baseball cards have also been kind of a pillar of my collection for almost the same amount of time, going back into the mid 90s as well. So that's something I've done. But it's not something necessarily too many people might associate with me. If you do watch the YouTube channel and you do observe a lot of the pickup videos I have, you're going to notice that I have vintage projects I'm working on all the time. Even at the time that I'm recording this right now, I'm still chipping away and working on a 1953 Bowman color set. And I've been picking up a lot of the big cards for it, and I still have my eye out. I'm still on the lookout for other potential additions to that collection, but it's one of those things. I'm going to chip away at it, and one of these days I look forward to doing a video where I'm going to showcase a full set, and that'll be a lot of fun, I think. But the point is, I've got these little projects I work on, but the Modano is one that I do get pigeonholed with a lot because that's kind of been a focus of the collection for so long that it's almost, you'd almost be it would be very easy for you to think that, oh, he must just collect hockey stuff. And the thing is, I do, but one thing that I've had fun with on the live stream a little bit is that I've sometimes liked doing discussions with other collectors that collect other things. Like I had Andy, she blinded me with refractors on YouTube, on the channel to talk about UFC cards. And the thing is, I've got a small collection of UFC cards as well, so it was very easy for us to have a conversation. I'm hoping to have somebody on the channel to talk about the wrestling cards a little bit because, again, I've been getting and having some fun with that category a little bit as well, so it'd be nice to have that conversation. And At the same time, it was fun talking with Mike O. And Mike O is very heavy into baseball collecting. And the thing is, like I said, I do enjoy collecting baseball cards as well. But it's one of those things. Again, you get associated with something and it's almost forgotten that actually there's other things you can do and other things you might be interested in. And I've had fun exploring all these different aspects of collections, including some of the stuff I've been doing all along. Like I said, the vintage baseball I've been doing forever. The Medano cards, obviously, I do that. But it's funny because outside of that and a few other vintage hockey projects, I don't collect a lot in hockey. I've got a few player collections that I work on. I've got the Medano collection that I just mentioned. I do still collect some Jamie Benn cards. I've had a little bit of a backstory of why I collect that, and I think I've talked about it in the past on the channel. But that's one that I collect as well. And lately, I've been trying to pick up some Jake Ottinger cards. Yeah, he's the goaltender for the Dallas Stars, and hopefully he could be. It looks like he's going to be solidified as potentially their young starter. Hopefully, the goaltender for years to come. It would be nice to solidify that position. I would love to be able to root for a Dallas Star team to actually be relevant past the heyday of Medano and Sergei Zubov and Darian Hatcher and the like. But the point is that I do have some categories of hockey stuff that I collect. And obviously, one of the things being in Canada, we obviously have a lot of exposure to hockey. And I've got the fall and I've got the Expo, the fall and spring versions of it. And I have no problem. I'm well versed in being able to talk about hockey for the most part. The more modern you get, it gets a little trickier for me because I don't keep track of the products anymore. But I find, for me personally, a lot of those side projects become a lot more interesting for me. The Medano collection is always going to be one of the pillars. It is one of the focuses of my collecting. The vintage projects that I work on, whatever happens to be the project I'm focusing on at that time, that's always going to be a major focus. But that still leaves me some bandwidth. It still leaves me some room. And that's the point that I'm trying to get around to with this whole story is that I think it's healthy for collectors to have be able to go down some rabbit holes and have some fun and some whimsy. And I want to be careful with this. And I'm explaining a couple of reasons, and I'm going to explain kind of why I wanted to talk about this time around. So one thing I'll say first is I want to give a little bit of credit because Baubles and Ball Cards had a video recently where he was talking about kind of his own background and everything, and it's specifically having a little poking a little fun at the idea that it's not just about vintage or black and white sports cards, so to speak. I'll leave a link to that YouTube channel in the description of both the YouTube version of this as well as the audio version of this. So if you want to check out that YouTube video, you certainly can. Check out his channel. He's a great collector and enjoys dabbling in a lot of different areas. But that video was talking about those different areas. And that's kind of, again, what gave a little bit of inspiration to this idea that I wanted to do this video. But what I also want to touch on here, kind of playing off of that and building off of it in a different direction, is that I think it's healthy for collectors to have some of those fun diversions so we don't get too tunnel vision in terms of one category. Now, what's kind of funny about this for me is that I've done a video in the past where I talk about, I basically talk about the idea of having more of a focus on your collection and not getting pushed in too many different directions. And I 100% believe that. And I don't want to mislead you and say like, oh, are you saying the opposite now? Actually, I'm not. I like those diversions, but again, the main pillars and focus of the collections have not changed. They are the anchor that the collection is built on. The Mike Medano collection is the priority for me as far as my collecting. And those vintage projects I'm working on are right there with it. So if it's 1A and 1B, whatever you want to put it, that is basically the crux, the anchors that my collection is built on. However, that still leaves me a little bit of bandwidth to pursue some of these other little projects, like that poker autograph set that I mentioned in a previous YouTube video, and these wrestling cards that I have fun with. I have little themes that I'm putting together with those wrestling cards. It's not no rhyme or reason to it. There is a little bit of a method to my madness on those, but I am having fun exploring different sets and different series and different versions of ways of pursuing it. But being able to give yourself the latitude to be able to pursue and go down those rabbit holes a little bit, again, a controlled visit down that rabbit hole, is I think a good and healthy thing. And I think what it really does for you is I think it prevents the buildup of a burnout. Because a lot of times people will get burned out. If you were just focusing on the same thing over and over again, number one, you get stuck in that tunnel vision. You can't see outside of it. You basically keep burrowing further and further down that same path. It becomes very difficult to find the enjoyment after a while. I enjoy, even though I don't have as many mail days as I used to have when there was a lot of stuff to pick up, and I'm being a little bit more selective. Nonetheless, I am finding that I still get plenty of enjoyment from my collecting. I look forward to mail day still to this day, and there's still some potential mail days down the road here. Like I'm building up stuff in ComC, and it's going to be this big lump sum pickup, maybe like approaching 100 cards. I think it's going to be a lot of fun sorting through that. I'm going to have fun sorting through it, putting it in all its different places, Z folios, boxes, all these different things, making a video talking about it, because I am going to make a video and talk about, I picked up this. And it's not going to be just one thing. It's going to be some of those poker autograph cards that I picked up on ComC. It's going to be potentially some wrestling cards, most likely. I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be. And it's also going to be, though, it's going to be some baseball cards. It's going to be some Mike Modano cards. It's going to be some, Jake Ottinger cards. Like, it's going to be all kinds of different stuff that falls under all these little areas that I like to hit on and all these things that I've been working on. And that's the point. That's the fun part of it, collecting for me. And it's one of those things where there is a good place to have focus because, if you notice, I made emphasis to that 1953 Bowman color set. I also have a 1963 Fleer baseball set that I'm working on. But right now, those are my only two vintage projects that I've got on the go. I've got a whole roadmap, and I'll make another one of these. Like I said, sometimes we can stack them on top of each other. I'm going to make another one of these audio versions where I'm going to talk about the idea of maybe building out your own collecting roadmap. That'll probably be my next episode. But the point is that I've got in my head and already written down a roadmap of these are the things that I want to do. But it's one of those things where I really want to make sure I'm pretty far along on some of these other projects before I then start incorporating this other thing. Or I want to be done preferably so that then I can say, okay, that's done. Now I got a chance to talk about it, make a video, have my fun, and I've got everything in binder, I've got everything put away. Now I can start working on this other project. I sometimes give myself a little room to breathe in between, but then I can start pursuing the next thing. Having that little roadmap in the back of my mind means there's always, a next mountain to climb. There's another path to follow, but I want to finish the journey that I'm on here first before I then go run to another one. That's the focus piece. I'm not doing 50 things at the same time. Even though it may seem like from the stuff I listed off, there's a ton. When I'm saying that, yep, I've got the Modano collection. Yes, I collect Jamie Benn cards here as well. And yes, I'm picking up some Jake Ottingers. I've only picked up one or two Jamie Benns in the last several months. So it's not like I'm constantly doing everything at the same time. That's just not possible. And unless you have unlimited funds, you simply can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense if you say, okay, so right now things have cooled down a little bit. The Modanos are a little harder to come by. Not necessarily, but if I really just wanted to buy something, I could go on eBay and buy it. But I'm trying to be a little bit picky. So it's dried up in terms of ones that I really think would be fun to add right now. Okay, is there anything interesting in the Jamie Benn category? No, not really. Maybe a card or two. Okay, fine. Okay, anything else going on here? Okay, maybe now's a good time to pick up a couple of Jake Ottingers. So even though I've got 3 potentially projects there going on, I'm not doing them all at the same time. I'm only grabbing maybe a card here, a card there, and then, okay, we'll grab some Ottingers right now because right now that makes sense to me. At the same time, in these side projects, I'm not trying to collect every wrestling set. I was working on the AEW, Premier Edition, and I've made good progress on a lot of the stuff I wanted to work on with it. But most of the stuff that I wanted to work on as far as that set is concerned, I'm done most of it. There's a couple of things that could be kind of fun, but maybe that's going to slow down for a bit. Okay, no problem. Slow that down and go focus on another thing. I'm working on that poker autograph set. Well, great. I can work on that for a little bit and then make some progress. And there's a good chance I can finish it off in the next couple of months here. And then, all right, now there's another project completed. On to the next thing. And basically by doing that, there's always something for me to look forward to. But at the same time, I don't lose sight of the fact of enjoying what I'm doing right now. And that's just kind of the approach that I take to it. Again, your mileage may vary. Everybody's got their own path and their own way to do this. I'm not prescribing this to you as the only way to do it. Certainly isn't. There's a billion ways to do this. But what it really comes down to is I do encourage you to find whatever it is, the path that you want to do. The one thing that I will say, though, is that trying to collect 80,000 things at the same time is almost always the path to disaster. Best of luck to you if you choose to do it that way. Trying to be absolutely laser focused on one thing, though, can get kind of monotonous. So I do think there's a little bit of a healthy balance in between. I found what that balance is for me because I never forget the core tenets. If it comes down to it and I'm prioritizing like 6 different things, and there's a great Modano card that's like a gray level card, I'm going to chase that first. And if it's nothing like that going on, but I see a great addition to my 53 Bowman color set that I want to add, well, then we're going there. So like there is a priority. There is still a pecking order. Even though all these projects are going on, I'm not trying to prioritize everything at the same time, which is actually impossible. The idea of prioritizing is that not everything can be important at the same time. You do have to pick and choose. There is a pecking order. But having all these different options and being able to prioritize it, and if one thing is kind of slowed down for a bit, I can look it over in this direction. It keeps things fresh. It keeps things interesting. It keeps me excited about mail day. So that's why I say that from a personal standpoint, I do suggest that you look at the idea of don't pigeonhole yourself. Even if other people pigeonhole you a little bit, well, try to encourage them and hey, actually, I do have other interests and there's a couple different things that I like. I like to do that on my Instagram quite a bit because it's like, I laugh because there's a couple of guys there that I think they're saying mostly in jest, but it's kind of funny to me. It's like, oh, finally a hockey card. It's like, well, that's the point. I don't want to post just hockey cards. That's not fun for me. And that's not all I collect, not even close. So to me, it's more likely that I'm going to be very picky when I add a hockey card or two in there, and it's going to be probably something that is meaningful to me, or something that's fun for me, or something that I think is kind of enjoyable to add and show off in that venue. But there's other stuff that I'm interested in as well, and that has always allowed me. I've really rarely ever had any real area times of burnout in my collecting career. It's been basically just when I didn't have the resources or the time to pursue it. That was more the issue than really a burnout or anything else. Because I've always had a different project, I've always been able to put something down for a little bit, come back to it later, and then focus on this for a little bit, and it keeps things fresh and it keeps things interesting. Anyway, a couple different thoughts I wanted to throw at you there, a little bit more of a story of some of the things that I've developed in my collecting over time. Hopefully some of that was maybe potentially helpful to you if you're trying to figure out, which direction you want to go with. Again, it should really come down to the individual. What works for me certainly doesn't necessarily have to work for you. Maybe you can borrow a couple of things that I said, and maybe some of that will be helpful to you. But hopefully, like I said, hopefully you got something out of it. Anyway, so if you're checking out the YouTube version of this, leave a comment in the comment section if there's something that you're. What do you usually work on? What do you get associated with that maybe people kind of typecast you and go, well, actually, I do collect other things. Or what other little side projects do you work on that are interesting to you? I'd be curious to see what different rabbit holes some of you have gone down under. Otherwise, if you're doing the audio version, I guess leave a 5-star review because it is a podcast, I guess. It is available on some podcast platforms. But otherwise, the majority of these are all available on my YouTube channel because I'm Carlos. I leave a link to these episodes always in the description. If you check out the audio one, there is a link to the YouTube version, and I've got a channel with now hundreds of videos. And I do live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we talk a bunch about the hobby and a bunch of other stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of sitting around having a beer and just hanging out and chatting with the chat and with folks on screen. Anyway, so that's it for now. Thanks very much. If you're on the YouTube version, like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always appreciate the support. We'll catch you in the next one.